Jesse Waters thought he could take charge of the conversation, like he usually does on Fox News. Within just 3 minutes, he interrupted Representative Jasmine Crockett 9 times, cutting her off every chance he got. But on her 10th attempt to finish a thought, something remarkable happened that left Waters completely taken aback and showed him for the bully he really is. The studio lights were blaring as he leaned in, that familiar grin plastered on his face. He had invited Crockett onto his show, Jesse Waters Primetime, expecting her to be an easy target to dominate. After all, she was just a rookie congresswoman from Texas, while he was a big shot at Fox News. What could possibly go wrong? But there she was, sitting across from him, dressed sharply in a dark jacket, composed but with a gaze that felt sharp as a knife. She had done her homework. She knew exactly who Jesse Waters was and was prepared for his usual tactics. Before we dive into this intense showdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. It's about to get real. The tension in the room was palpable when Crockett began to respond. She barely managed to say 3 words before Waters jumped in with his first interruption. "But Congresswoman," he started, cutting her off mid-sentence. It was classic Waters, using the same old strategies employed against so many others before her. But this time, things were different. This time, he picked the wrong person to mess with. To understand why this exchange was so intense, we need to look at who these two people are and why this clash mattered so much. At 45, Jesse Waters had built a career on interrupting, belittling, and humiliating his guests. He kicked things off as a producer on The O'Reilly Factor, where he really honed his skills in what some call gotcha journalism, ambushing people on the street with tricky questions. Once Bill O'Reilly's star began to fade, Waters took center stage, showcasing his signature smug demeanor and strategic interruptions during prime time. He had perfected what media analysts dubbed the bulldozer technique, a carefully crafted approach to dismantle political opponents live on air. Waters would spend hours familiarizing himself with Democratic talking points, preparing key phrases designed to catch guests off guard at their most vulnerable moments. His production team even came up with subtle signals to help him time those interruptions for maximum effect. Behind the camera, Waters was known for his relentless prep work, often spending entire afternoons watching footage of potential guests, looking for inconsistencies or embarrassing moments he could leverage during interviews. His research team compiled detailed dossiers on every Democratic politician scheduled to appear, filled with personal jabs, family controversies, and political weaknesses. His program, Jesse Waters Primetime, turned into must-watch TV for millions of conservative viewers who enjoyed seeing him take down liberal politicians and activists. Waters had essentially mastered a formula: invite a Democrat, ask loaded questions, interrupt before they could fully respond, then mock them in front of his audience. It was political theater at its most brutal, and Waters played the role of maestro of perfection. He had a unique talent for targeting women of color. Knowing his mostly white, male audience would eat up every condescending remark and eye roll. Members of the Congressional Black Caucus had learned to avoid his show altogether because they recognized it was a setup. But Jasmine Crockett was a different story. At 43, Jasmine Crockett embodied everything Waters typically sought to tear down: a black woman, a Democrat, and a first-term congresswoman who'd already made a splash in her brief time in Washington. She was unlike many politicians who crumbled under media pressure. Crockett had been sharpening her rhetorical skills her entire life. Born and raised in St. Louis, she earned a law degree and worked for years as a civil rights attorney before stepping into politics. She wasn't a rookie in Congress. She was a seasoned litigator who knew how to deal with tough opponents. In courtrooms, she had taken on corporate lawyers, corrupt officials, and biased judges. To her, Jesse Waters was just another antagonist in a suit. What really made Crockett a force to be reckoned with was her level of preparation. She didn't just walk into interviews hoping for a pleasant experience. She studied her rivals, analyzed their tactics, and came ready with the facts to counter any narrative. She had spent hours watching Waters' show, picking up on his patterns, the best moments to interrupt, and his usual deflection techniques. Representative Crockett. Waters started, his tone dripping with false politeness. "You've been pushing for this extreme voting bill that would change how America runs elections. Why do you want to make it easier for fraud to happen?" It was a loaded question designed to put Crockett on the defensive right from the start. The word extreme was a jab meant to rile up conservative viewers, and the phrase, "make it easier for fraud," implied wrongdoing before she could even reply. This was classic Waters, the way he framed discussions to make any response sound like an excuse. But Crockett was ready for this exact tactic. She took a deep breath before answering. "Jesse, that description of the legislation isn't fair. What we're actually trying to do is, but Congresswoman, you can't argue that this bill would get rid of voter ID requirements in many states. Crockett paused, her jaw tightening just a bit, but she kept her calm. In the background, Waters' producer gave a thumbs up through the studio window. The interruption came at the perfect moment, throwing her off her game. This was the classic Fox News tactic at play. If you'd let me finish, Crockett replied, I was about to explain that the bill actually boosts election security by... How does getting rid of basic security measures improve anything? That doesn't really resonate with most Americans. It was clear Waters wasn't interested in her points. He was focused on steering the conversation with these strategic interruptions. His team had identified certain phrases, like enhance election security, voter access, and federal standards that triggered interruptions. They were marked as hot buttons in his prep notes. But Crockett had dealt with this before. She switched tactics and sped up her delivery to get her message across before he could jump in again. Her legal background taught her that hostile judges often use similar styles, so you have to make your strongest arguments count from the start. The legislation sets up a federal standard that makes sure every eligible American can vote while keeping the system secure. Federal standard? I mean you want Washington bureaucrats running local elections now. Waters leaned in, delivering this line with that signature aggressive demeanor of his. His audience loved his combative style, feeling like their guy was standing up against big government. The phrase Washington bureaucrats was tested to get maximum outrage from Fox viewers. Crockett's eyes sparkled, but her tone stayed steady. Jesse, you keep interrupting me. Your viewers won't get the real facts about this legislation. It was her first direct challenge to his tactics, and it caught Waters off guard for a moment. Most guests either crumbled under his interruptions or showed clear frustration, which played right into his hands. But Crockett was doing something different. She was calling out his behavior while staying composed and professional. Waters leaned back, his smirk growing. He was enjoying this back and forth. I'm just asking the tough questions the mainstream media doesn't touch, Congresswoman. It was his usual deflection, painting himself as a truth seeker while suggesting that Crockett was used to soft interviews. His team had trained him to use this line whenever guests pushed back, and it usually sent them back on the defensive. Then let me respond to them. Crockett shot back, her tone becoming sharper. The federal standards would actually stop the voter suppression we've seen in states like voter suppression? Come on, Congresswoman. Requiring ID to vote isn't suppression. It's just common sense. The interruptions were coming faster now, and Waters clearly relished the control he had. His producers were probably thrilled with the ratings, as viewers tuned in to see another Democratic politician get overwhelmed on Fox News. The control room was likely buzzing with excitement as social media metrics showed skyrocketing engagement. But something in Crockett's demeanor shifted. The polished politician was starting to fade, revealing the sharp-witted litigator underneath. She had been patient, professional, even a bit deferential. But after 4 interruptions, her patience was wearing thin, and her strategic instincts were kicking in. In the courtroom, she learned that sometimes you let the opposing side overstep their bounds before landing a solid blow. Waters was doing just that, giving her everything she needed, a clear pattern of disrespect she could turn against him. Jesse, in Texas alone, we've seen over 750 polling places shut down in mostly black and Hispanic neighborhoods. Those are just Democratic talking points. Congresswoman, do you have any real evidence to back that up? It sounds like you're playing the race card again. Most Americans don't buy into these conspiracy theories about voter suppression. Isn't this really about Democrats trying to win elections that they can't win fairly? By the 9th interruption, the vibe in the studio had shifted dramatically. Waters, caught up in her performance and brimming with confidence, didn't notice how Crockett had changed. She wasn't a defensive politician struggling to get her points across anymore. Instead, she had morphed into something much more powerful, a prosecutor who just witnessed a defendant incriminate himself multiple times. The audience at home felt the tension too. Social media exploded with viewers counting interruptions, calling out Waters' clear bias, and waiting for Crockett to hit back. The hashtag Let Her Speak started trending as people voiced their frustration over Waters' blatant disrespect. Crockett leaned back in her chair, a small smile creeping onto her face. She had allowed Waters to tangle himself in his own arrogance. It was game time. Her instincts told her that the jury, in this case, the viewing audience, was ready for her closing remarks. What happened next would go viral, becoming one of the most impactful moments in cable news history. Crockett turned her gaze straight to camera, momentarily overlooking Waters, and addressed his audience. You know what, Jesse? I appreciate it. Waters blinked, momentarily thrown off by her unexpected reaction. His notes hadn't prepared him for gratitude. Guests were supposed to break down or get defensive, not thank him. His production team was scrambling too, the producer flipping through backup questions in case things went even further off script. Thank you? Yes, Crockett pressed on, her voice now emanating authority. You've just given a perfect example of what I mean when I discuss voter suppression. Waters instinctively started to interrupt again, but Crockett raised her hand, like a federal judge quieting a courtroom. The authoritative gesture was so unexpected that for the first time in the whole interview, Waters stopped talking. The last 3 minutes, you've cut me off 9 times. 9 times you blocked me from finishing a single thought or sharing one fact, from allowing my voice to reach your audience. You've used your power as the host, your control over the mic, and your platform to silence an elected representative of the people. And then you have the audacity to question why black and brown communities speak about suppression. The studio went silent. Even the camera operators seemed caught off guard, unsure whether to capture Waters' shock face or Crockett's commanding stance. The control room fell quiet, with no one knowing what to say or do next. Waters' usual smirk faded away, replaced by a look of genuine confusion and vulnerability that his viewers had never seen. He looked like a man who had just stepped into a trap of his own making, with no escape. But Crockett wasn't finished yet. She'd put in years of work to get to this moment. Every tough courtroom, every challenging client meeting, and every attempt to silence her had prepared her for this showdown. Look, Jesse, what you just did to me is exactly what Republican-controlled state legislatures are doing to voters all across this country. They're cutting people off before they can even take part. They're making it harder for voices to be heard. They're using their power to decide who gets to speak and who gets silenced. Her voice picked up intensity, each word hitting hard. The camera zoomed in closer, capturing the fire in her eyes along with a faint smile that hinted she wasn't done yet. This wasn't the easy target Waters had expected. She was a skilled communicator, transforming his studio into her own platform. Leaning in, her tone grew more powerful. You interrupted me when I tried to talk about the 750 polling stations closed in Texas. You cut me off when I brought up federal standards. You silenced me about documented cases of voter suppression, just like state governments are doing by shutting down polling locations, cutting early voting hours, and putting up unnecessary hurdles for voting. The comparison she drew was strikingly clear and powerful. Waters' actions had perfectly illustrated the issues she was highlighting. He had demonstrated voter suppression tactics live, on air, while denying they even existed. Waters finally tried to speak, but his voice sounded weaker, more defensive than anyone had ever heard from him. Now hold on, Congresswoman. No, Jesse. Crockett cut in, using his own tactic against him with sharp precision. You've had your turn. You've interrupted me 9 times. Now it's my turn to talk. The role reversal was shocking. Waters, who built his career on controlling conversations through interruptions and intimidation, found himself silenced and unprepared. His usual tactics, the smirk, the condescending tone, the aggressive stance, abandoned him in this intense moment. You brought me onto this show to discuss voting rights, Crockett continued, her voice steady and strong. But instead of letting me lay out the facts, you turned it into a show meant to embarrass and silence me. You proved my point better than any data or studies ever could. She shifted her gaze to the camera, addressing Waters' audience directly. This is what suppression looks like. Folks, it's not always obvious. Sometimes it's just about not letting people finish their thoughts. Sometimes it means making sure certain voices never get heard. Waters looked visibly shaken, likely with the production team yelling in his earpiece, but he seemed frozen. No guest had ever turned his tactics back on him so effectively. And here's what's interesting, Jesse, Crockett said, her tone almost casual. You keep talking about election integrity and ensuring the right people vote, yet you can't even manage the integrity of a simple interview. You can't even let an elected official finish a sentence about legislation she helped create. The takedown was complete. Waters had been revealed not just as an intimidator, but as a hypocrite embodying behavior he claimed to oppose. The aftermath of Crockett's stunning performance was unlike anything Fox News had ever seen. Just minutes after the interview wrapped up, social media exploded with clips, reactions, and analyses from viewers who called it one of the most effective takedowns in cable news history. Twitter lit up first, with the hashtag Let Her Speak racking up over 500,000 posts within the first hour. Users shared side-by-side clips of Waters interrupting other guests, showing that Crockett's points weren't just about this one interview. They represented a pattern of unchecked behavior. A viral post from a former Fox News producer said, "I worked at Fox for 5 years. I've never seen Jesse Waters look that defeated. She didn't just outsmart him, she exposed his entire strategy." Instagram and TikTok were flooded with short clips of Crockett's standout moments, especially when she mentioned Waters proving her point about voter suppression. Young activists made memes and graphics highlighting the 9 interruptions, turning Waters' bullying into a teaching moment about media manipulation and voter suppression tactics. The most shared clip was Crockett's direct appeal to the camera. "This is what suppression looks like, folks." It struck a chord beyond politics, resonating with anyone who had ever been talked over or dismissed. Meanwhile, behind the scenes at Fox News, executives were in crisis management mode. The network had built its brand on hosts overpowering liberal guests, but Crockett had flipped the script so completely that Waters appeared weak and unprofessional. Leaked internal emails later showed advertisers worried about being associated with the interview. Waters himself looked rattled, skipping his usual post-show social media victory lap. His Twitter account went silent for over 12 hours, sparking speculation about potential fallout or his inability to respond. When he finally tweeted, it was a weak attempt at claiming victory. "Great discussion with Representative Crockett tonight. Always good to tackle tough issues." But the replies were ruthless, with even his supporters questioning how he let her steal the spotlight. The Congressional Black Caucus showed strong support for Crockett, with members sharing messages praising her performance. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries tweeted, "This is what happens when you try to silence a brilliant attorney and public servant." Jasmine Crockett just delivered a masterclass in handling media bullies. Support for her came from both sides of the aisle, with some Republicans privately admiring her poise and skill. One anonymous GOP member even told reporters, "I disagree with her politics, but wow, that was impressive. She completely outclassed him." The interview quickly became a must-watch for political science and communications students across the country. Professors use it to discuss media bias, the significance of being prepared, and the dynamics of power in broadcast journalism. Georgetown University School of Public Policy even added the interview to its courses, with Professor Sarachin saying, "This exchange teaches students more about media manipulation and political communication than entire semesters of theory." Meanwhile, Harvard's Kennedy School of Government rolled out a seminar called The Crockett Method, turning hostile media into educational opportunity, which became so popular that enrollment caps were needed, leaving hundreds on waiting lists. Students analyzed how Crockett managed her timing, body language, and strategic pauses to reframe the conversation. Law schools incorporated the interview into their trial advocacy programs to show how her courtroom skills translated to the media world. Other networks took the chance to criticize Fox News and Waters. CNN's Anderson Cooper started his show by saying, "If you invite someone on your program and interrupt them 9 times, don't be shocked when they use their 10th chance to teach you a lesson on live TV." MSNBC's Rachel Maddow dedicated a segment to examining the interview, highlighting how Crockett used Waters' behavior to illustrate voter suppression. She turned a hostile interview into a perfect metaphor for suppression tactics, Maddow pointed out. Even conservative media struggled to defend Waters, with some acknowledging that his approach was unprofessional. Talk radio host Hugh Hewitt mentioned, "Jesse made us look bad. You can't claim to support free speech while preventing someone from speaking for 3 minutes." This interview marked a significant moment for Waters' career. Although he continued to be on air, his style shifted notably, with fewer interruptions, particularly towards women and people of color, as social media scrutiny ramped up. In the month following the interview, his show lost nearly 200,000 viewers in the 25 to 54 demographic, and potential guests began turning down invitations, pointing to Crockett's experience as proof of bad faith discussions. This resulted in a booking crisis for his producers. For Crockett, the interview launched her from being a freshman congresswoman to a national figure. She was inundated with speaking requests, and her fundraising soared, raising $2.3 million in just 48 hours, more than her entire previous quarter. Media training organizations began using her performance to teach politicians how to navigate hostile interviews, coining her technique as the Crockett Method. The interview also sparked broader discussions about interruption and power dynamics in workplaces and personal relationships. The hashtag Let Her Speak became a movement that encouraged people to call out silencing tactics, with women's advocacy groups embracing Crockett as a role model for dealing with dismissive behavior. Moreover, it reignited important conversations about media literacy, with educators using it to help students recognize loaded questions and manipulation tactics. The connection Crockett made between Waters' interruptions and voter suppression provided activists with a strong metaphor, with clips turning into tools for voter education. The NAACP tweeted, "When Jasmine showed how media suppression mirrors voter suppression, she gave us a teaching tool for years to come." The exchange between Waters and Crockett set a new benchmark for handling hostile media, inspiring a generation of media-savvy progressives and pushing networks like Fox News to rethink their strategies. This powerful clash between Jasmine Crockett and Jesse Waters offers a critical lesson. When we prepare, stick to our principles, and stay patient, we can turn any challenge into a chance to educate and inspire. If this story fired you up like it did for countless others, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell to catch more moments like this. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What part of how Congresswoman Crockett handled this encounter stood out to you? And if there are other political showdowns you'd like us to break down, let us know. In a world where bullies think they can silence crucial voices, the strongest response is to stay calm, be strategic, and let them show their true colors. Jasmine Crockett didn't just win a debate. She showcased a masterclass in confronting power with grace and intelligence. Share this video with anyone who needs to see what true strength looks like. Supporting voices like Crockett strengthens democracy itself. Join us for the next breakdown, where we'll dive into another moment when the truth triumphed over bullying on live television.